In this video, we are trying to understand what stdbind does. You might have seen this piece of code used in various ROS softwares in C++. So let's look at what stdbind does. Before that, let's start with a very simple example. Here we have a function called multiply, which takes in two integers and returns the multiplication value of these integers. The second method is basically a wrapper around the first method multiply. This is called multiply by 10, where you give in an integer value and it returns the integer value multiplied by 10. So if we are sending a value 5 to multiply by 10, we expect 50, right? So let's see what happens here. Compiled, and if we run 50, that's what we get, and that is what we expect. So this function effectively is a wrapper around multiply. There is another way to do it using stdbind. Let's first do that and then talk about stdbind. Stdbind is a part of functional, so we include it. To use stdbind, this is what we do. This will be a bound function. What we've done is we basically use stdbind to make a wrapper around the function multiply, and stdbind, what it's doing here is that it's taking the function multiply, the first argument, which is 10, and the second argument is a placeholder. And if you write this, what it does is the second argument is not fixed, and that will be something we can give, and right now it's a placeholder. So stdbind returns a function which is bound function. It can return a function or a method based on what you're doing. In this case, it is a function. And then we can use this new function instead of multiply by 10. So we don't need to create a new function, and stdbind does it for us. So here what we can do is we can call bound function with the value 5. So 5 will replace this placeholder. 10 is already there as the first argument. Let's see what happens with this. 50, that is what we get. So if we change this value to, let's say, 11, let's compile, 55. So basically we have this wrapper function. stdbind was able to make a wrapper function for us without us explicitly making a function here. So we don't need this. But this is not actually what we see in ROS code, right? We see that we are using stdbind for making callbacks for subscribers, let's say. So in that case, let's see how we use this in ROS code. Okay, to make the idea analogous to what we see in ROS, let's say we have a class A which has a function and it multiplies the argument by 10 and returns the value. We can make an instance of this class. Let's say it's called A, and then we can call this. Should work, right? We should get the value 50 back. Let's see what happens. 50. So it works. Now what we can do is we can actually use this method as a callback in ROS. So in that case, what we want is, if you're making a callback, we cannot really say that the callback is a dot func, right? So that does not work. What we have to do is we have to make a callback this way. You have an instance of the object, and you have this callback method now, which will be created by stdbind. What we need to do here is we need to pass this method, which is function, and we also have to pass the object. Otherwise this callback method will not understand, or effectively the callback will not understand which instance of the object this is associated to. So this instance is A, and so this is needed. And of course the placeholder, because the placeholder is for this argument int A. So that is all we actually need. So now we have a callback method which is associated with this object A, which is an instance of the class A, and we have this method which is a part of the class A. So we basically again have a wrapper, and now what we can do is, instead of calling a.func, what we do is callback method, and let's see what happens. It still works, and this is what we see in ROS code frequently. In ROS code, you would see that if this method is called within the class, instead of A, you would have this, which means it's basically talking about the object itself. So in this case, it will be A and not this, because we are not inside the class. But this is how we use stdbind in ROS to make callbacks. I hope this video helped you in some way, and we will of course keep talking about different bits and pieces when it comes to coding for robotics and ROS. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.